Hi everyone, it's Stephanie here and welcome back to the last day of Camp Create 2019. In today's video, we are going to be focusing on awesome ombre, and I'm going to be doing something a little bit different here. And rather than doing an ombre technique on my background, I decided that I wanted to make the rainbow die cut ombre. So I'm going to do all of the separate pieces and kind of create an ombre look on each of them. So this is our Rainbow Bright Die-namics, and what I love about this is it's a really large rainbow, so it covers a lot of your card front and all of the different pieces of the rainbow cut out separately so that you're able to add all of the different colors to each piece. Now you could die cut this from cardstock to make it really quick and easy, but I wanted to create that ombre look on each of the rainbow pieces, so I decided to use distress inks and die cut them from white cardstock. So what I'm doing is I've already figured out how I want to position this on my card, so I know which way I want the rainbow to go. And I want the darker part of the rainbow to be at the bottom and then to kind of go up into that lighter ombre look as I make my way towards the top. So you can see as I'm doing this, it's very quick and easy to do. You only need one color for each one. And what you want to do is you want to start with a lot of color at the first end, and you want to kind of lighten that color as you make your way up towards the other end. So I really saturate the paper at the bottom and apply the most ink there, and then I use my ink blending tool and I just kind of lighten my hand as I make my way up, and I kind of pull that ink as I go. And then that way I can kind of control how much ink I'm putting down and how much of the area I'm keeping with that ombre look. So ombre is pretty much just taking a color and having it go from darker to lighter in a gradient type fashion. So this is easy to do by doing this ink blending because we're doing a darker and a lighter color, and then you end up with those medium colors in the middle. And you'll notice as I'm doing each of these different pieces of the rainbow that I'm changing the paper I have underneath of me where I'm doing my ink blending. And that's just because sometimes the distress inks can kind of transfer to each other, especially when I'm doing lighter colors. So the yellow, it definitely would have happened. So I like to just do a couple of colors, and then I like to switch up my paper and move it so that I have a fresh piece. So I'm not worrying about having any of that ink kind of transferring from the scratch paper underneath to the piece of the rainbow that I'm working on. Okay, so now we're on our last piece here. I have Wilted Violet Distress Ink, and I'm starting at the bottom on that one just the same as I've been doing all along, and then I'm just kind of letting that lighten up as I go. With this color here, this is a very dark color right out of the gate, so you really want to be careful with this that you don't put too much color down at once. I always recommend starting with a lighter hand and kind of building the layers of color rather than going in really bold at first, because it is too hard to take the color away, but you can easily add color on top. So now that we have all of the ink blending done, you can see that I have my rainbow here, and we have this really cool ombre effect on it, but each of the colors is its own area. So even though we wanted to have all of the different colors, by doing the same technique on each of the pieces, we are able to get the same look on all of them. I have a white card panel that measures 4 inches by 5 1/4, which is slightly smaller than the A2 size card base that we're going to adhere this to. And I'm just going to start adding each of the rainbow pieces one by one. I find liquid glue is the easiest way to do this because you can quickly add the adhesive to the back, and it gives you a little bit of wiggle room so that you can kind of push the pieces together and get everything fitted together nicely. So I started at one end and I'm just adding each of the pieces one by one, and you can see that I'm making sure to keep the ombre end on the panel. So the end of the rainbow that's the lightest, I'm making sure to line that up with the left edge of my panel. And that's because doing this portrait style, the rainbow doesn't fully fit on the panel, so we're going to end up having to cut some of it off. And I don't want that to be the darker area, because if we cut off all of the ombre end, it's actually just going to look like one solid rainbow, and you're not going to get that really cool effect where we kind of lighten the ink as we go. So I'm going to keep the darker end on the side that we're going to trim off, and I left the lighter end on the side that we're keeping on the panel. Once I have them all in place, I just flipped it upside down and took my scissors and trimmed off the excess using the card panel as my guide. And now I'm going to add the rest of the elements to the card front. So the first thing I want to do is add a cloudy border at the bottom. I've used the Stitch Cloud Edges Die-namics, and I've die cut 2 clouds from white cardstock. I left them quite large so that I was able to easily trim them off, since I didn't really know how I wanted to position them when I die cut them. Once I had this one in place, I once again used liquid glue to be able to move it around, and then I used my scissors to trim off the excess. For the smaller front piece, I did measure and cut that a little bit smaller before I added it to the card, just because I wanted to use foam adhesive on that one to give it a little bit of dimension, and I found it easier to trim it up a tiny bit before adding it. I also die cut a sun using the Sunny Skies Die-namics, and I left it in the negative die cut piece so I could add some inking. Since it does have all the little sun rays, it's a lot easier to do it this way. And what I did is I took my yellow ink, and once again I went really dark on one side of the sun, and then as I made my way up towards the top area, I'm going a lot lighter with my blending tool, and I'm just adding a little bit of that yellow ink. And what that's going to do is it's going to give us the same ombre effect that we added to the rainbow, and it's going to make the whole card look really cohesive when we're finished. I trimmed down some of the rays so that I could easily tuck this down into the cloud since I wanted it to kind of be peeking out. And then I used liquid glue once again, added it to the center of the sun, and adhered this on. I didn't put any glue on any of the sun rays because I wanted them to be able to kind of lift up a little bit off the card and add a little bit of dimension. Okay, so now we can move on to our sentiment, and for the sentiment I decided to stamp it on black cardstock with Versamark ink, which is a clear sticky ink, and I'm going to emboss it with white embossing powder. I love the look of black sentiment strips with white embossing on any type of card where I have a lot of color. I do this quite often, so if you watch a lot of my videos, this is definitely something that you've seen before. So I went ahead and heat set that, and then I die cut the sentiment using the Skinny Strips Die-namics, which is one of probably my most used dies. I love using this for sentiments. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out where I want to position this on the card. There's all kinds of different spots that you could kind of add this. You could layer it right over the sun. You could kind of position it down on the clouds, but I decided to layer it over top of the rainbow piece and kind of have it come off the right-hand side, so I did trim off the extra. I'm also going to be adding this to a black licorice card base to add even more of that black color, which is really going to make the colors pop even more on the card front. And then once I have that adhered on, the last thing I want to do is add some clear droplets to the card design just to give it a little bit more detail and dimension, since right now it is just a bunch of die cuts. I just love the look of this and I think they go really well with the design. So I'm adding a few to the sun area first and kind of moving them around until I was happy with the placement. And then I also added a few more scattered around the card front. And then that is going to complete our card, and we're left with this really cool ombre effect on both the rainbow and the sun that we created using distress inks and just varying the darkness and the lightness of the ink that we were applying. I hope today's video gave you some ideas on ways that you can add ombre to your card designs. Make sure to check out the video description below for all of the details on Camp Create, and head to the blog to enter your card for this week's challenge. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.